We live in interesting times for the headlines. A teenage boy guns down fellow students at a California high school on his 16th birthday, killing 2 and wounding another 3 before turning the pistol on himself. China's President Xi Jinping warns that protests in Hong Kong threaten the one country, two systems principle governing the semi-autonomous city that has tipped into worsening violence with 2 dead in a week. Italy declares a state of emergency for Venice after an exceptional tide surge through churches, shops and homes, causing millions of euros worth of damage to the UNESCO city. And Vancouver's new Filipino jeepney food truck named Shameless Buns. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. And we begin tonight with the news that again broke tonight. A deadly school shooting. This time, police said a student on his 16th birthday opening fire on fellow students in Santa Clarita, California, north of Los Angeles. Take a look. At least 2 dead tonight, according to authorities. The teen gunman opened fire at Saugus High School during what's called zero period, about an hour before classes began. It was just 7:30 in the morning when the shooting at the school of 2,300 students was first reported. The teen was carrying a backpack and opened fire. This is an active shooter situation, the local sheriff's department tweeted, as police and ambulances swarmed the area around Saugus High School in Santa Clarita, 40 kilometers north of Los Angeles. It said the suspect, described as a male Asian with black clothing, was still on the run. The city of Santa Clarita tweeted that there were multiple victims injured in the early morning shooting. The students were congregating in the quad right near the entrance when the alleged gunman, also a student, opened fire.
The suspect was later identified as one of the victims who was found in the quad. He is identified as a 16-year-old male whose birthday is today. Detectives have reviewed the video at the scene, which clearly show the subject in the quad withdraw a handgun from his backpack, shoot and wound 5 people, and then shoot himself in the head. There are no other subjects who are outstanding as part of this incident or who took part in this assault. The victims who are hospitalized, and I regret to say that at 9:23 this morning, one of the female victims, age 16, passed away. Her parents are at the hospital. There's another female victim, age 14, another female victim, age 15, and 2 male victims, each 14 years of age.
I do want to update one thing. We just received word that one of the 14-year-old victims at the hospital has also passed away just moments ago. So our fatalities now were 2. So with heavy heart, we're going to move forward with the investigation, figure out what went wrong. And I hate to have Saugus be added to the names of Columbine, Parkland, Sandy Hook, but it's a reality that affects us all throughout the nation, something we're going to have to deal with.
A class of around 30 students followed their emergency drills and began barricading the doors with desks and tables before waiting in silence, ready to wield a fire extinguisher as a weapon. Take a look.
I was about to leave for school, and my friend described it as he heard 1, 2, everyone started screaming and running. There was a little bit of a pause, 3, 4, 5, and that was it. And he just ran to the Mormon church, and all my friends ran here. So we did drill it several times, but the thing is, you think okay, let's practice, but this doesn't happen. When we think to ourselves what school we go to, we think of Saugus, and Saugus isn't the school this is going to happen to. We just seem so much more safe than a lot of schools, and for it to happen here, it's just, I can't even comprehend it. It doesn't make sense to me how this could happen here.
I was just in my government class, and then somebody just freaked out and said that we had to lock the door, and then my teacher rushed to the door, and then we just locked, put all the chairs in front of the door. And it was just really scary having everybody panic and call their parents saying they love you, and just, it was scary.
Meanwhile, officials confirmed that the suspect had posted a message in his Instagram bio the day before the shooting that said, "Saugus, have fun at school tomorrow." However, this message has since been changed, although it's not clear by whom.
I also want to acknowledge, and I believe most of you have reported on this, posting on the bio of what we believe to be the subject's Instagram account. And I quote, it says underneath his pseudonym, "Saugus, have fun at school tomorrow." I can confirm that that was posted on his account, and I can also confirm that it has been changed since this incident, which means there is somebody else that has access to this account, be it a hacker or be it a friendly who has his password. We have not yet established a motive or a nexus between the subject and his victims, other than to say they were all students at the high school together.
At this time, we have no reason to believe that the subject was acting on behalf of any other group or any ideology. We have no reason to believe there's any threat or any co-conspirators at this time. But this is day one of the interviews and the exploitation, and things could change. The investigation, of course, is ongoing.
The point that we do not release the location of a suspect or a subject who is in custody is for security reasons. But based on this line of questioning from everybody, it doesn't take a mental giant to understand that the person who was here is that. So now we're going to have to double or triple our security measures because of that.
President Donald Trump tweeted that his staff continue to monitor the terrible events, adding his deepest condolences to the families and friends of those tragically lost. The incident is the latest of more than 40 shootings at U.S. schools since as recently as May 2018, when a 17-year-old killed 10 people, 8 of them students in Santa Fe, Texas. Authorities said his shotgun and revolver were legally owned by his father. 3 months earlier, a 19-year-old expelled from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, returned and opened fire, killing 14 students and 3 staff members. There's roughly 1 school shooting a week in the United States, according to Everytown for Gun Safety. News of the shooting broke during a debate on gun control legislation at the Senate in Washington. In other news, thousands of pro-democracy protesters took to Hong Kong streets on Friday, defying a warning by Chinese President Xi Jinping, as a campaign of mass disruption extended into a 5th straight day. Hong Kong has seen relentless protests since June, as many in the city of 7.5 million people have vented fury at eroding freedoms under Chinese rule.
Burden that we may not be the front line, or we may not be that proactive as a student to setting up the roadblocks or doing those things for the movement. But since we think that every person in Hong Kong we have a role to play, and if we want the movement to be successful, then I think we need to make our efforts or sacrifice, no matter how big it is or how limited it is, but we still need to make such an effort or a sacrifice at our role or at our comfort zone. So sacrificing a few hours during lunchtime or a few hours during the weekend to do what we think we need to do is required. We work hard not because we see hope, but because we keep on doing it, we keep on working hard until we see the hope.
You can say that we're disrupting the operation of the society, but it's our way to say no to government and to put pressure on the government to answer our demands. On the internet, there's been a cry for people to go on a strike, but for some of us it might not be possible, maybe due to our job nature or other reasons. That's why it's the least we can do to give up our lunchtime to come out and protest the government.
Black-clad protesters also occupied university campuses while office workers endured another day of transport chaos with suspensions on the vandalized train network and roads blocked by barricades. With China offering no concessions, protesters switched tactics on Monday when they launched a Blossom Everywhere campaign to cause as much disruption as possible across Hong Kong and overwhelm the police force. Their actions through the week have caused chaos across Hong Kong and been accompanied by intensifying violence from both sides. 2 people have died in a week in incidents linked to the protests. The 5-day strike has also seen major universities become a hub for the protesters, the first time a movement characterized by its fluidity and unpredictability has coagulated in fixed locations. Violence from both sides has also escalated and tensions have spilled out overseas. On Thursday night, Hong Kong Justice Secretary Theresa Chang fell in London after being surrounded by pro-democracy protesters in the most physical confrontation involving a member of the cabinet since the unrest began. And Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam on Friday condemned the incident. She described it as a barbaric attack. Chang walked away from the confrontation without any signs of injury. On Friday, a Lunch With You event saw thousands of mainly office workers take to the city streets, many chanting "Stand with Hong Kong" and raising an open hand with 5 fingers displayed. It is a reference to the 5 demands of the protest movement, which include the right to freely elect Hong Kong's leaders, as well as an independent inquiry into alleged police brutality. A 70-year-old man died on Thursday from injuries sustained a day earlier when he was hit by a brick during clashes between protesters and people angry with them. Police on Friday also said they had opened a murder case into the man's death. On Monday, a man arguing with protesters was set on fire by a black-clad masked person, with that incident caught on camera and posted online. On the same day, a police officer shot an unarmed protester at close range. In a related news, Hong Kong police say now may not be the best time to intervene at Chinese University in the north of the territory. It's the scene of some of the fiercest clashes between protesters and police this week. Let's listen in.
I think all of us will agree that the situation today is still really tense inside the university campus, and we consider that it may not be the best time for police to intervene in order to avoid any violence, clashes and confrontation at the moment. And that's why a few days ago we retreated from the number 2 bridge, and this is for the purpose of allowing more time for both sides to take a break and cool down.
Hong Kong awake to a day of chaos last Wednesday following a night of intense battles between pro-democracy protesters and riot police on a university campus that saw some of the most violent scenes in more than 5 months of unrest. And this week has seen a marked escalation in violence with intense street battles, violent clashes at universities and lunchtime protests in the financial heart of Hong Kong. It's the first time in weeks that protests have taken place during weekdays. Meanwhile, China condemned an incident in which Hong Kong's Justice Secretary was jostled by mass demonstrators in London and accused Britain of fueling pro-democracy unrest. Now, Theresa Chang, Hong Kong's deeply unpopular Secretary for Justice, fell while being surrounded by a crowd of jeering pro-democracy protesters as she prepared to attend to a speaking event on Thursday night in London. She regained her feet moments later and was escorted away with no visible signs of injury in video footage of the incident. But China called it an appalling attack and has demanded that Britain offer security protection to the Hong Kong minister.
我们对香港特区政府律政司司长郑若骅在英国遭反中乱港分子围攻受伤一事表示强烈的愤慨和严厉的谴责。
Former colonial ruler Britain, which handed Hong Kong back to China in 1997, has urged Beijing and Hong Kong to seek a political solution for protesters and condemn the escalating violence on both sides. Now, Ms. Cheng is in London on a visit to promote Hong Kong's role as a dispute resolution and deal-making hub. She's one of the most unpopular government officials in Hong Kong because she's seen as playing a key role in pushing forward the now-shelved extradition bill to China, which sparked the ongoing protest. To the U.S. now, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said U.S. President Donald Trump bribed Ukraine by withholding aid until Kiev committed to investigating his political rival, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter. The comments signal that Democrats believe the evidence that emerged from the first public hearing of President Trump's impeachment inquiry was strong enough to back their argument that the president abused the power of his office to advance his political interests. Take a look.
The devastating testimony corroborated evidence of bribery uncovered in the inquiry, and that the president abused power and violated his oath by threatening to withhold military aid and a White House meeting in exchange for an investigation into his political rival, a clear attempt of the president to give himself the advantage in the 2020 election. The bribe is to grant or withhold military assistance in return for a public statement of a fake investigation into the elections. So that's bribery. Yes. So again, with that responsibility, we go forward sadly, prayerfully, say with a heavy heart, because it's not what we came here to do, but we must uphold our oath of office. Questions? Right to do. But nobody, President is not above the law, President will be held accountable, and nobody should have the right to endanger whistleblowers. And that is the system that I will defend, and the American people understand that. Yes, ma'am.
A crucial surprise came when acting U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, revealed a phone call between President Trump and another diplomat occurred one day after the president's controversial July 25 call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ambassador Taylor said his staffer was with the ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, and overheard President Trump on the call asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations of Democratic rival Joe Biden.
Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for.
And the president did that by pressing this vulnerable ally to get involved in the next presidential election in a way that the president thought would advance his re-election prospects. Did so by inviting Zelensky to do these political investigations, and more than that, did so by conditioning a White House meeting as well as ultimately hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid needed by this ally.
This was Adam Schiff's first opportunity in front of the public. These hearings have been conducted in a basement bunker, part of his regime of secrecy, and this was an abject failure for the Democrats and for Adam Schiff. Number one, he still refuses to hear from the whistleblower, which started off this whole process. Number two, in less than 20 minutes, Adam Schiff interrupted Republicans' questions. So we want to make sure that all members are able to ask questions. That includes Republican members. This is a continuation of his conduct in closed-door meetings. Key facts here are as follows. One, Ukraine got the aid. Two, there was no investigation into the Bidens. Those facts speak for themselves, and I'm proud of our members for making sure that those facts were clear for the American public.
I know nothing about that. First time I've heard it. The one thing I've seen that Sondland said was that He did speak to me for a brief moment, and I said no quid pro quo under any circumstances, and that's true. The other, I've never heard this. In any event, it's more second-hand information, but I've never heard it.
Do you recall having a conversation with
I don't recall, no, not at all, not even a little bit.
Political expert Jim Thurber says Democrats overestimated the interest and knowledge of the American people in their decision to proceed with televised impeachment hearings. Thurber, a distinguished professor of government and the founder of the Center for Congressional and Presidential Studies at American University, said he thinks it's 100% certain the House will vote to impeach President Trump, but it's unlikely he will be removed. Let's listen in.
I think that it's 100% certain that they will go to judiciary and they'll draft a impeachment statement, an indictment. I think that it will then, after maybe a week or two, will go to the floor of the House and they will vote in a party line vote in favor of impeaching the president, which means an indictment. At that point, it will go to the Senate. Likely that they will decide to have the trial. And it's likely, it looks like, that will stretch out for several weeks. They will have specific rules of the Senate, but they'll pass their own rules. Now, one of the rules is, will they have witnesses or not? They decided not to in the past with Clinton, and of course, President Nixon resigned before we got to that stage. I think it's likely that they will not have witnesses. He's been saying, though, that he wants to run a trial. Now, there's a political reason for that. There are many people in the Senate running for the presidency. Two of them are right at the top: Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren. They're in a three-way tie, basically, with former Vice President Joe Biden. And if they're required to be in Washington at a trial, it really hurts them in terms of being able to campaign. I think it's unlikely that President Trump will be removed. There's only really one senator, maybe two senators so far that seem like they'll vote against it. There is a rumor that they will have a secret ballot voting whether to convict him or not. If that's the case, maybe there's 4 or 5, but that's not enough to convict him. I don't think he'll be convicted, but it's still 50-50, and it reflects the polarization, the ideological sorting in America, and geographic sorting, where rural areas are overwhelmingly Republican, urban areas overwhelmingly Democrat, and suburban areas are up for grabs to a certain extent. It reflects that. I don't think the facts are getting out easily. It's really a complex issue, and I think there's fatigue by the American people about the impeachment, about the Russian involvement.
He did speak to me for a brief moment, and I said no quid pro quo under any circumstances, and that's true.
I think the Democrats overestimated the interest and the knowledge of the American people. Quid pro quo. Most people really don't understand that. It means this for that. It's Latin, okay? They've heard it, but they don't know what the hell it means, right? And secondly, it gets very complex in terms of a president calling the leader of another nation and asking him for a very specific activity to help in the next election.
Meanwhile, President Trump said that Adam Schiff, the House Intelligence Committee chairman, should be prosecuted because he made up the whole conversation with Ukraine president. Now, he said this during a meeting in Louisiana. Let's listen in.
And honestly, they hurt our country incredibly badly, because I don't like releasing calls with other presidents and prime ministers. You don't like to do that. You don't want to do that, but you had to, because he totally fabricated, he made up my conversation. He's a thief, he's a crook, and you know what? He's a corrupt politician, and frankly, he should be prosecuted. The only problem is he has immunity because he's a congressman, and based on the poll numbers and other numbers, but based on the poll numbers, the people of this country aren't buying it. You see it, because we're going up and they're going down. let's keep it going for a while.
In other news, Israel launched fresh strikes against Islamic Jihad targets in Gaza. The army said early Friday weakening a ceasefire put in place after fighting this week killed 34 Palestinians in exchanges of fire. The ceasefire began on Thursday morning following 2 days of deadly violence in the Gaza Strip. It was triggered by an Israeli strike on an Islamic Jihad commander. The escalation began early Tuesday with Israel's targeted killing of a top Islamic Jihad commander, Baha Abu al-Atta, whom it accused of being behind rocket fire and other attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Abu al-Atta, quote, was killed alongside dozens of terrorists after the strike on his home, adding, "Our enemies got the message. We can reach anyone, even in their beds." Now that strike triggered almost immediate retaliatory rocket fire from Islamic Jihad at Israel, setting off air raid sirens and sending Israelis rushing to bomb shelters in the country's south and central regions. Israel's military said some 450 rockets had been fired at its territory since Tuesday morning, and air defenses had intercepted dozens of them in fireballs high up in the sky. No Israelis were killed, though one rocket narrowly missed speeding cars on a busy highway. Israeli medics said they had treated some 63 people as of Wednesday night for mild injuries and stress. Israel responded with airstrikes, saying it targeted more Islamic Jihad militant sites and rocket and missile launching squads. Chile announced Friday it will stage a referendum to replace the country's dictatorship-era constitution, a key demand of protesters after nearly a month of sometimes violent civil unrest. The current charter, in force since 1980 and enacted by the former military junta of Augusto Pinochet, has been changed numerous times in the years since. But it doesn't establish the state's responsibility to provide education and health care, two demands made by millions of Chileans who have taken to the streets. Lawmakers in Chile's National Congress agreed early Friday to hold the plebiscite in April 2020 after hours of intense negotiations between the governing coalition and opposition parties. The unrest that began on October 18 with protests against a rise in rush hour metro fares has mushroomed into a broader outcry against the status quo, with burning, looting, and daily confrontations between demonstrators and police. The crisis is Chile's biggest since its return to democracy in 1990, leaving 20 people dead, 5 at the hands of state forces, and more than 1,000 injured. Protesters cite low wages, high costs for education and health care, and a yawning gap between rich and poor in a country dominated politically and economically by a few elite families. To Bolivia now, interim President Janine Áñez ruled out exiled leader Evo Morales from standing in new elections as thousands of demonstrators marched through La Paz in support of the socialist icon and against the new acting leader. Take a look. The interim government announced on Thursday that talks with Morales' Movement for Socialism, or MAS party, had begun in a bid to bring peace to the deeply polarized country. Pledging early elections, Áñez, until now a little-known lawmaker, proclaimed herself acting president on Tuesday after Morales fled the country for Mexico, claiming to fear for his safety amid deadly protests. Her move was validated by the country's top court. Unrest erupted when Morales, Bolivia's first indigenous president, was accused of rigging the results of October 20 polls to gain re-election for a fourth term. But Ms. Áñez, 52, said Morales could not take part in any new elections. Bolivia's constitution limits a president to 2 successive terms. Meanwhile, columns of people streamed into the seat of government La Paz from the neighboring town of El Alto for the second day running to press their argument that Morales' departure was not a resignation but the product of a coup. Waving multicolored Wipala indigenous flags, many of the demonstrators chanted, "The time is now, civil war, and comeback evil." U.S. allies South Korea and Japan should settle their differences to maintain a military intelligence sharing pact, according to Washington's Defense Secretary Mark Esper. He urged this on Friday. He also called on Seoul to reverse its decision to end it. GSOMIA is an important tool by which Korea, the United States, and Japan share effective and timely information, particularly in times of war, Esper said in Seoul, where he was beginning an Asian tour. Seoul and Tokyo are both major U.S. allies, democracies and market economies faced with an overbearing China and wayward nuclear-armed North Korea. But their relationship is heavily colored by territorial and historical disputes stemming from Japan's bitterly resented 35-year-old colonial rule over the peninsula in the early 20th century, including the use of wartime sex slaves and forced labor. The current tit-for-tat row was triggered by South Korean court rulings against Japanese companies and has seen the neighbors remove each other from their lists of trusted trade partners. Russian Honorary Consul Army Lopez Garcia was hailed anew in Manila for recently receiving the Russian Order of Friendship from no less than President Vladimir Putin. Here's Erlo Bringas for the report.
Army Lopez Garcia.
The Embassy of the Russian Federation in the Philippines has paid tribute to Army Lopez Garcia, the first Filipino to be decorated with the prestigious Order of Friendship by Russian President Vladimir Putin at a reception hosted by Russian Ambassador Manila Igor Kovaev in Makati City. The envoy says congratulated greetings to Garcia and praised her works in the past decades as a highly efficient Russian Honorary Consul covering Cebu, Aklan, and Bohol. Russian envoy Igor Kovaev said that this award of Garcia is one of the greatest achievements also of the Philippines. This is also the first time that a Filipino receives these prestigious awards from Russian President Vladimir Putin.
She has made a great contribution to the strengthening of friendship and partnership of our two countries. First of all, she helped many Filipinos to discover Russia, through Russia, to understand that Russians and Filipinos, they have a lot in common. So she did a lot in order to promote Russian culture, Russian history, and so on. And at the same time, she helped many Russian people visiting the Philippines to understand better your country, your culture, the mentality, the psychology of your people, your lifestyle. She's doing a lot in terms of business activities, trade and investment projects, in culture, education, in many other fields. As Madam Army Lopez Garcia, she is our very, very close, very good friend and our sister. We deeply respect her and love her.
Garcia also sent her appreciation to the Russian President Vladimir Putin for giving a prestigious award. She also indicates that this is also an achievement of the whole Filipino nation. Garcia also says that her excitement since she received the award is not yet finished. She also stated her feeling while the Russian president gave the awards to her.
Yeah, it is. I think this is very timely, and it was given to me, awarded to me, at the point where our relationship between our countries is at its peak, and the relationship between President Rodrigo Roa Duterte and President Vladimir Putin is very, very good. So I think this is a signal that we have to move forward. So it dawned on me that I have to do something, because the Russians are really warm people and very educated, and they have their values are like us.
Garcia is also a Cebu-based entrepreneur and chairperson of the Philippine-Russian Business Assembly. The Order of Friendship is awarded to citizens for outstanding contributions to strengthening friendship and cooperation between nation and peoples. for exceptional achievements in Russia's economic and scientific potential development and friendly relations among countries. Among the most notable recipients of the award are the late Singapore Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, the Vietnamese General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, and former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
I think it's a very significant, really important event because Madam Army Lopez Garcia, she's the first Filipina who received a high-level state award of Russia in the Kremlin. She was invited by President Putin to the Kremlin to attend this ceremony. So it's a very good signal. It's a clear message to all Filipinos that Russia is a friendly country. Russians have a lot in common with Filipinos. Russia wants to be a close friend and reliable partner of your country.
Some of our Russian brothers back in Russia don't really know much more about the Philippines. So I think there's now a call and a challenge for the Department of Tourism to join me in promoting the Philippines and also promoting, while I am doing the promotion here of Meet Russia, I would like to propose that there will be a Meet Philippines in Russia.
The Russian government and Filipino government is still improving their relationship to each other to improve more their friendly relationship. Reporting for Eagle News, Arbringas, I'm 1 25.
I would bring another.
Thank you, Erlo. In Canada, our kababayans will feel closer to home when they try out Vancouver's new Filipino jeepney food truck named Shameless Buns. The foundation of this Shameless Buns name, branding, and menu is the Pandesal. It will serve as a breath of fresh air for those looking to spice up their lunch break or grab and go. EBC's Kathleen Cruz is on that story for us.
Do you like pandesal, adobo, or tocino, but with a twist? Shameless Buns here in Vancouver got you covered. Vancouver's funkiest food jeepney is serving Vancouverites a little taste of Filipino. It may not be your typical Filipino food. That is no problem because the inspiration is still Filipino cuisine.
So Shameless Buns is a food truck that's all about showcasing Filipino flavors and Filipino food in a really different way than most people probably have experienced with Filipino food before. So we started the business because me personally, being a non-Filipino, fell in love with the cuisine. We created it because we wanted to take this cuisine that, in our opinion, is really misrepresented, that not a lot of people are familiar with, and, you know, make it kind of cool and make it kind of fun and funky. We saw that there was a real kind of void in Vancouver for this type of Filipino food.
This food truck is a breath of fresh taste. Here is Matt to explain more about their specialties and how they elevated and kind of tried to westernize the cuisine.
So our most popular dish would be our adobo fries. So it's our chicken adobo. It's essentially one of the national dishes of the Philippines. We braise our chicken adobo for hours and hours until it's literally falling apart. So I describe it to people as almost like a play on pulled chicken. So we take our fries, and I have to note our fries are dusted with the sinigang seasoning. Sinigang is a tamarind-based soup from the Philippines, super popular, very sour, and so our fries almost taste like salt and vinegar chips. We do a lot of stuff with longanisa, so Filipino sausage. You can get it in a sandwich, or you can get it over our fries with the dish is called the sausage party. So it's basically breakfast on fries. Spam fries are literally as they sound. They are strips of spam cut up into fry formation and deep fried. We have a bunch of dipping sauces, including our garlic calamansi aioli, our sriracha mayo, our smoky maple mayo, and our spicy Filipino vinegar, plus our homemade banana ketchup that we do as well.
Are you hungry yet? There is more that Shameless Bun offers that can also cater vegetarians, all for a quick grab.
So what we came up with was a jackfruit coconut adobo. So what we do is we braise our jackfruit in coconut milk, soy sauce, vinegar, bay leaves, garlic, and there's just this beautiful creamy, tangy. We use pandesal, So as you know, pandesal is the beloved bun of the Philippines, hence why we're called shameless buns. Really soft and light and airy. We have the happy ending, which contains a lot of cool Filipino ingredients: homemade ube jam, coconut macapuno, coconut jam, condensed milk, Milo for like a little nostalgic kick.
The creativity that Matt and his girlfriend had put in to fully conceptualize Shameless Bun menu has created a lot of noise not only among those who haven't tried Filipino food, but most especially to the Filipino community.
I can proudly say that Filipino people love our food. Some of the older generation is sometimes a bit skeptical. They don't see rice on the truck, they don't see lumpia, they don't see pancit, but when they try our food, their minds are usually blown. They absolutely love it.
From Vancouver, Canada, Kathleen Cruz, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Kathleen. Business News is up next.
Hi guys, I'm Ray Francisco here at the Shoe Museum in Marikina in the Philippines, reminding you to watch Digital News every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And I am 1 for 25.
Welcome back. South African Airways workers embarked on an indefinite strike for higher wages and against the national carrier's retrenchment plan, forcing the cash-strapped airline to ground hundreds of flights. The strike has forced South Africa's largest carrier to cancel more than 200 domestic, regional, and international flights between Friday and Saturday. The company has also asked travelers who had flights booked between Friday and Saturday not to turn up at airports and instead offer them a chance to rebook for free or to fly on other flights operated by partner airlines. More than 3,000 workers, including cabin crew, check-in, ticket sales, technical, and ground staff, are taking part in the open-ended, according to unions. The airline, which employs more than 5,000 workers, is one of the biggest in Africa, with a fleet of more than 50 aircraft, providing dozens of domestic, regional, and European flights each day. But the company is deep in debt, despite several government bailouts, and has not recorded a profit since 2011. The unions are pressing for a 3-year guarantee of job security and an 8% across-the-board wage hike. The airline is also offering a 5.9% increase. The European Union's investment arm said it will stop funding fossil fuel projects from 2022 as part of a new strategy aimed at fighting climate change, in a decision environmental campaigners hailed as a significant victory. The European Investment Bank, the world's largest multilateral lender, had been criticized by climate groups for funding gas projects that potentially threatened the EU's commitment to the Paris climate goals. The decision comes after European Commission President-elect Ursula von der Leyen called for the EIB to turn into a climate bank. Andrew McDowell, EIB Vice President in charge of energy, said that the decision came after the lender's largest ever public consultation. The EIB has been criticized for dragging its feet on gas investments after providing 2.5 billion euros for fossil fuel projects last year, the bulk of which went towards gas pipelines. Under the EIB's new policy, projects from 2022 will have to show they will emit less than 250 grams of carbon carbon dioxide for every 1 kilowatt hour of energy they produce. Chinese technology giant Alibaba on Friday confirmed plans to list in Hong Kong in what it called a $13 billion vote of confidence in the turbulent city's markets and a step forward in its plans to go global. The enormous IPO, which Hong Kong had lobbied for, will come as a boost for authorities wrestling with pro-democracy protests that have tarnished the financial hub's image for order and security and hammered its stock market. Alibaba will offer 500 million shares at a maximum of 188 Hong Kong dollars apiece to retail investors, according to the company. The number 8 is considered auspicious in China. Over-allocation options could take the total value to more than $13 billion, making it one of the biggest IPOs in Hong Kong for a decade after insurance giant AIA raised $20.5 billion in 2010. Alibaba had planned to list in the summer but called it off owing to the city's long-running pro-democracy protests and the China-U.S. trade war. The U.S. and China are now working on sealing a partial trade deal. Daniel Zhang, Alibaba Chief Executive Officer, said the group wanted to contribute, quote, in our small way and participate in the future of Hong Kong. Tiny Singapore had embraced electric scooters in a big way, but deaths and fires linked to the two-wheelers have prompted authorities to introduce tough rules that could put a brake on their runaway success. Take a look.
I think they are a environmentally friendly way to get around, but I can understand how they can be a hazard as well, considering how sometimes people just zoom around. But I feel sometimes it's also the responsibility of pedestrians to look around and be aware.
It's a very big problem for me because I'm a single dad. For me, it's very tiring for me to use bicycle to deliver. After that, going back home, I will be taking care of my son alone.
You're watching Eagle News. Environment News is up next.
With gorgeous white sandy beaches that stay cool to touch even on the hottest summer days, blue-green ocean waves, and a warm ocean breeze, there's no wonder why Dr. Beach has named Siesta Key, Florida, the #1 beach in the United States. Don't forget to watch episodes of Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I'm Melissa Protest, coming to you from Siesta Key, Florida, and I am one with 25.
The massive bushfires raging across Australia are expected to flare up again as temperatures rise in the coming days. Temperatures across Western Australia are predicted to hit mid 40 degrees Celsius at the weekend. Now, the death toll from the devastating bushfires in eastern Australia has risen to 4 after a man's body was discovered in a scorched area of bushland. 3 others have perished in bushfires in New South Wales. The state worst affected by a series of catastrophic fires that broke out along the eastern seaboard late last week. Native wildlife has also been badly hit by the bushfires, with conservationists estimating that hundreds of koalas have died. As many as 350 koalas died in a single nature reserve near Port Macquarie alone, raising fears for the future of the creature in the area. Now, bushfire-prone Australia is experiencing a horrific start to its fire season, which scientists say is being exacerbated by climate change. The Bureau of Meteorology says human-caused climate change is also increasing the frequency and severity of dangerous bushfire conditions by raising temperatures, sapping moisture from the environment, and causing an earlier and more extreme fire season. And flood-hit Venice is still bracing for another exceptional high tide as Italy declared a state of emergency for the UNESCO city, where perilous deluge have caused millions of euros worth of damage. Churches, shops, and homes in the city of Canals have been inundated by unusually intense aqua alta or high waters, which on Tuesday hit their highest level in half a century. The crisis driven by bad weather has prompted the government to release 20 million euros or $22 million in funds to tackle the devastation. The water was expected to reach 5 feet mid-morning Friday as strong storms and winds batter the region, lower than Tuesday's peak but still dangerous, according to local officials. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, who has called the flooding a blow to the heart of our country, said that a state of emergency had been approved. Mayor Luigi Brugnaro has estimated the damage to Venice at hundreds of millions of euros. A massive infrastructure project has been underway since 2003 to protect the city, but it has been plagued by cost overruns, corruption, scandals, and delays. The plan involves 78 gates that can be raised to protect Venice's lagoon during high tides, but a recent attempt to test part of it caused worrying vibrations, and engineers discovered it had rusted. Heavy snowfall across a large swath of southeast France has left one person dead and cut power to some 300,000 homes, with icy conditions snarling train and road traffic on Friday. Take a look. A 63-year-old man was killed on Thursday evening in the Isera department after a slow-laden tree fell on him while he was trying to clear away another downed tree, according to local officials. Grid operator Enedis said 300,000 homes were without electricity on Friday, mainly in the Drôme, Ardèche, Isère, and Rhône departments, which include the cities of Lyon and Grenoble, according to a spokesman, and he told this to BFM television. Up to 30 centimeters or 1 foot of snow had fallen at higher elevations near the Alps in less than 24 hours, and 15 centimeters was reported at the Lyon airport. The Météo France weather agency had lifted travel warnings for much of the area by Friday morning, though maintained alerts for snow and black ice. The Philippines on Friday reported its first case of a vaping-linked illness, as health authorities expressed concern at court orders preventing them from regulating electronic cigarettes. A rash of vaping-linked deaths and illnesses in some countries has raised concern over the rising popularity of e-cigarettes, touted as less harmful than tobacco. India and some U.S. states have banned e-cigarettes. A 16-year-old girl in the central Philippines who had been using e-cigarettes for 6 months was hospitalized last month for severe shortness of breath and met the criteria for vaping-related lung injury, according to the Department of Health. The girl was treated by a pediatric pulmonologist and discharged. All e-cigarette users should seek immediate medical help and ask their doctors for ways to quit these harmful products, according to Health Undersecretary Enrique Domingo in a statement. The Health Department last month ordered hospitals to document vaping-related cases and also drew up regulations. All right, Taylor Swift on Thursday publicly reignited her battle with the heads of her former label, saying it is threatening to bar her from going through with an upcoming performance and Netflix documentary over her plans to re-record her early albums. Earlier this year, the superstar began feuding with industry mogul Scooter Braun over his purchase of her former label for more than a decade, the Nashville-based Big Machine, which gave him a majority stake in the master recordings of her first 6 albums. "Don't know what else to do," Swift wrote in a tweet which contains screenshots of a long statement in which she alleged that Borchetta and Braun, who own the rights to her early albums, were preventing her from performing her own work at the upcoming AMAs, at which she is set to receive the Artist of the Decade award. The 29-year-old said Braun and Scott Borchetta, president and CEO of Big Machine, are, quote, exercising tyrannical control over her, telling her team that she's not allowed to perform, quote, my old songs in television because they claim that would be re-recording my music before I'm allowed to next year. Now, Swift pleaded to her fans and fellow artists to back her against Braun and Borchetta, who have not made any public statements regarding the singer's latest posts. In other news, colorful designs are everywhere in Germany as part of the yearly Festival of Lights in Berlin. EBC correspondent Irene Juliet Arzadon reports.
Hello and welcome to Berlin, the capital city of Germany. I am Irene Juliet Arzadon and I will take you to the world's largest open gallery for free. Are you ready? But everything starts when the sun has set and the night fall upon the city. Different sightseeings and monuments are irradiated by lights. This event is called Festival of Lights, and the theme for this year is freedom, to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the fall of the wall in Germany. One thing you shouldn't miss is the slideshow at the Brandenburger Gate, followed by the Adlon Hotel, Television Tower, Rausch Chocolate Manufactory, the Concert Hall, Bebelplatz, and Berliner Cathedral. The best part is, you can decide what you want to see and how long, and everything is for free, except bus and boat tours, for those who doesn't want to walk a lot. So if you are in Berlin in October, don't miss the Festival of Lights. I am Irene Juliet Arzadon for EBC Bureau Germany, and I am 125.
Famously known as the Kingdom of Dolls, Japan's time-honored cultural craft comes to Bahrain in an exhibition of the finest dolls of traditional performing arts as well as regional and creative pieces. Our EBC correspondent Lorlyn Kalimlim reports from Bahrain.
We are here at Bahrain National Museum Hall 8, where the Embassy of Japan in Bahrain, in coordination with Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities, are holding the Dolls of Japan exhibition. The Dolls of Japan exhibition at Bahrain National Museum Hall 8, which already started from 13th October and will last until the 13th of November 2019, celebrates Japan's ancient tradition of fine tile making. Tourists would definitely enjoy their unique and respected dolls, which represent Japanese culture and tradition. This month-long exposition will impart knowledge to different nationalities on how Japanese people live from ancient to modern times. These dolls do not only portray their real life, but also their folklores, in addition to serving as a gift to loved ones, either in formal occasions or in children's festivals. Doll making has been a traditional craft in Japan, also known as Kingdom of Dolls. From Jomon period, when Toku humanoid figures were made up to Edo period, where many new types of dolls were invented.
I think it was a very good introduction and very traditional. And actually, as a Japanese, I didn't know such a lot of the collection of the dolls in the history. So it's really nice, good feeling to see all sort of things.
We just visit Bahrain Museum and then I saw, yun nga, itong the dolls of Japan. Well, I really admire the way that they making the dolls. Admire lang ako sa mga ano nila, and then the culture. We plan to visit also Japan soon. Kung ano yung mapag-aralan natin, then siguro someday makapagsuot din ng mga traditional clothes nila. So yun lang.
Sometimes seeing artifacts with your own eyes is more appreciative than learning from textbooks. With the help of this doll exhibition, people learned more about Japan, not only their history, but also their modern-day lifestyle. From Bahrain, this is Lorlyn Kalimlim, your Eagle News correspondent, and I'm Juan with 25.
Thank you, Lorlyn, and that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, thank you. We'll see you soon. I'm always Juan with 25. Good night.